As a 35mm projectionist, you'll be introduced to the magic of movies. Let's follow Jimmy as he shows you about projection in the play circle. Start by checking in the film by hand rewinding it to check for tears and breaks. Uh-oh! Looks like Jimmy found a pretty bad tear. To fix it, cut it at the start and the end of the break using the splicer. Line up and tape the fresh ends together. Then flip it over and tape the back side. After taping, always pull down the lever to punch in the sprocket holes. This film's good to go. Start preparing the projectors by adding a little bit of oil to the top, the reservoir at the middle, and finally a bit in 2 spots at the bottom of the projector. Next, turn on the sound system. First switch on the board. The far right slider controls the house. These control the monitors in the booth. Next, switch on the power to the projectors, the amps to the house, and the monitors, and finally, the 35mm sound processor. On the back of each projector, flip the power switch up and press the ignition button to light the bulbs. The aperture plate masks the film for the correct aspect ratio. Each ratio has a different aperture plate. Add the correct lens for the film, either flat or scope, by inserting the lens into the front and sliding it until the peg on the lens fits into the notch on the projector. Then tighten it down. Way to go! Let's load up the film. Place the reel on the top peg with the tail on your left. Insert the tail into the slot below the reel. Find the number 9 for countdowns starting at 11 and 6 for those starting at 8. Align the first frame of this number with the window above the lens and lock the plate into place. Feed the film under the sprocket just above the plate, leaving a slack loop in the film as you lock the gate. Now pass the film over the sprocket just below the plate, once again leaving a slack loop as you lock the gate. Now down below, feed the film around the sound drum and around the sprocket to the right, keeping it fairly taut as you lock the roller and the gate. Pass the film over the last sprocket and lock its gate, leaving a slack loop. Pass the film through the bottom slot. Place a take-up reel on the lower peg and snap it into place. Feed the film onto the take-up reel and wind it until it's tight. And we're ready to start the projector. First, start the motor with the switch below the lens. Then open the damper on the lamp housing. Here's what the aperture plate does to mask the film. The frame knob adjusts the framing of the film, moving the frame up and down. The focus knob at the front of the projector focuses the image. As the reel gets close to the end, a bell will warn you that you need to do a changeover. Go to the non-running projector and watch the upper right-hand corner of the screen for a cue mark. At this cue mark, start the motor on the second projector and open the damper. Watch for the second cue mark and press the foot pedal to switch projectors. Stop the motor on the first projector and remove the reel. Rewind it to get it ready for the next showing, then load the next reel on the inactive projector. Superb work! Now let's move up to the main theater projection booth, where things are a bit different. Up here, we begin by flipping the breakers to the projectors, amps, changeover system, and framing lamps. Next, move to your right and open the doors to the Frankenstein switches. Be careful not to touch the connectors, or you'll get a very dangerous and possibly fatal shock of direct current electricity. Now move further right and press the start button mounted on the wall, and watch the voltage meter above you rise to around 60 volts. These projectors need some oil too, so add oil to the small doored oil spots on the back side of the machine. There are also 2 more on the front side of the machine, as well as one hidden inside the back door. The system in this theater makes light by using 2 carbon electrodes that produce an electric arc as they burn. Move the damper out of the way to make a bit of room to work. Release the positive carbon by turning the lever and lifting it out of the stand. Now remove the negative carbon by opening the back door and turning the release lever. Then slide the carbon out of its stand, replacing the negative carbon with a fresh one. Now move the positive carbon stand to around the 9-inch mark. Place a new carbon in the stand and gently tighten the locking lever. Don't over-tighten it or you'll crack the carbon. Just snug enough to keep it from twisting. The tip of this positive carbon should line up with the end of the guide, and the negative should be about a 1/4 inch from it. Replace the carbons you take with fresh ones. Pushing in on the yellow knob on the right and turning will move the positive carbon closer and further from the negative one. Likewise, the rear center knob will move the negative carbon toward and away from the positive carbon. These two knobs adjust the mirror tilt. The carbons are good to go. Let's close the doors and damper and load the film just like before. Start the motor that controls the carbons with this lever at the back of the machine. While looking in the window, touch the carbons together to strike them and move them a short distance apart. You should see the arc form between them. Adjust the position of the arc with the yellow knobs to keep the tips between these two lines on the indicator in front of you. Start the motor with the switch in front of the projector. This knob adjusts framing, and this one adjusts focus. Keep an eye on the arc indicator and use the yellow knobs to keep the carbons at the correct position as they burn during the show. For changeovers, picture and sound are switched separately by a foot pedal and a switch on the wall. Hold the carbon lever when the reel is done. Then unload the reel and reload a new one before replacing the carbons. This gives the lamp house enough time to cool down. After a show, hit the stop button, flip the Frankenstein switches, and turn off the breakers. It can be a lot of work, but projecting is a fun and rewarding job. See you at your next show.